Welcome back to Simply Holistic. Dr. Tony here. Cortisol. We've been talking about cortisol in your sex life a bit. And we've been talking about cortisol and burning fat a little bit. Check the previous videos for that stuff. Cortisol. Let's dive into it a little bit more. So let me put it this way. Some pharmaceutical doctors like to watch a person's A1C. The A1C is the level of sugar that's been in your blood for the past 90 days. Kind of averages it out to see how much has consistently been there, what the reading is for over the past 90 days, 3 months. That's all A1C is. That's it. It tends to be used as part of diabetes testing. For me, it's not even the most important part of the diabetes testing. How does that relate to cortisol, though? Blood sugar, blood glucose. So, okay, warning. I am going to be stepping on and off the soapbox here. Because how people treat blood glucose, how people treat sugar in your diet is honestly beyond aggravating. It really is. It's just aggravating puts it nicely. The conception that we have been taught by the media and even the pharmaceutical industry has been driven by the media too, actually, really. The perception of the evilness of sugar that even other supposed professional doctors, nutritionists, dietitians promote. The supposed evilness of sugar is beyond frustrating. In fact, if I can be allowed to speak truthfully here a second. Okay, here for a second. I'm trying to speak truthfully. I'm always speaking truthfully. If I can be allowed to not speak as politely here for a second. The message that is driven through to us by the media and the pharmaceutical industry and all these other supposed professionals and dietitians and nutritionists and all this stuff, the message that they drive about how evil sugar is pisses me off. It absolutely pisses me off. We have been lied to. We are consistently lied to. Outright lied to about what sugar does to our bodies. We have been lied to. There's just no gentle way to say that. We have been lied to. And we are continuously, chronically, yeah, there you go. We are chronically lied to. Chronically lied to about sugar and how bad it is for us. And I know there's somebody watching that's going to say, well, this other doc said that they have seen under a microscope how it causes inflammation or amplifies inflammation. We have been chronically lied to about what sugar does to our body. The message that is hammered home is, cut out sugar from your diet. Cut out sugar. You want to get healthy? Cut out sugar. And then occasionally you'll hear somebody say, well, there's a difference between processed sugar and natural sugar. And yeah, granted, there's a difference. But as I tell some people that are in this office, if I have a choice between a lab-made sugar, such as oh my goodness, can't even think of the name of it now. The word that's coming through my mind is stevia, and it's not stevia because that's not. Oh my gosh, sucralose. If given a choice between something like sucralose, which is lab made, to if the choice is between something like that, lab made, to white refined sugar, I will tell you to take the white refined sugar every minute of every day, every hour, every day of the week. I will tell you to take that refined sugar, white refined sugar. But that's evil. The lab-made sugar is more evil than that white refined sugar. I'm not kidding. The lab-made sweetener is more evil to your body than that white refined sugar. Take that every time over the lab-made sweetener. The evilness of the message that we are given about sugar. Cutting out sugar leads to your daily energy is gonna flatline. Your daily energy is gonna flatline. Your mental clarity is gonna flatline. Your nervous system response, if somebody poses a danger to you and touches you or is even close to you, if they are even close to you, you should be able to sense them. If somebody that's a danger to you is close to you, you should be able to sense that danger, their presence. You cut out sugar, that's going to flatline. Somebody touches you, you should be able to feel that touch. Cut out sugar for long enough, that's going to flatline. You don't realize the danger that we are posing to our bodies by cutting sugar out of the diet. I'm telling you, it pisses me off. This message pisses me off. It is yet another tactic that is employed to further destroy our health. The message of cutting out sugar is another tactic that is employed to further destroy our overall health. I am absolutely not kidding about that. About that. This is not a clickbait message for me. This is not excuse me. This is not ear candy. Oh, I'm just going to tell someone what they want to hear. No, because then I'd be telling you the sugar is bad. If I'm going to tell you, if I'm going to tickle your ears with something. I'm not tickling your ears with this message. I'm here as always to cut through the BS and to give you the truth. To just get to the bottom line and tell you how it is. Well, this is how it is. And this is why the message that we have driven home to us about sugar pisses me off. Because this, what I'm telling you, is how it is. And there are studies, if you actually search, there are studies that are going to tell you everything that I just said so far in this video. You will find studies that say this. These are not promoted in the media, or by pharmaceutical doctors, or by the pop nutrition people, and dietitians, and what have you. You won't hear this from them. But if you were to actually search science studies, you will find these things in science studies. Now let me see if I can pull myself back from my soapbox and get back to this excerpt over here. Okay, blood glucose. See, this is why I got on that soapbox. Talking about cortisol and blood glucose. Glucose and protein homeostasis. Blood glucose levels drive key systemic and intracellular pathways. The blood glucose that shows up on our initial blood panel testing in this office, the blood glucose figure that I get on that initial blood test panel, I see what the level of sugar is in your blood. And 99% of the time, I'll sit here and tell the person to their face that what I'm reading, I'm not concerned about. Blood glucose levels in your blood, the sugar level in your blood. Cut out all sugar. The sugar level in your blood drives your systemic and intracellular pathways. The blood glucose drives your pathways, drives them. The presence of cortisol, increases the availability of blood glucose to the brain. I know, I messed that one up. The presence of cortisol increases the availability of blood glucose to the brain. Your brain thrives on glucose. If your profession requires a lot of mental thinking, a lot of mental figuring, a lot of mental alertness, you need glucose. It thrives on it. So the presence of cortisol increases the availability of blood glucose to the brain. Therefore, not only do you need blood glucose, you need cortisol at the proper level inside your body. This is where that soapbox came in. Beyond that, cortisol acts on the liver, the muscle. Okay, liver, the workhorse of your body, muscle, fat tissue, spare tire, and the pancreas. The pancreas is where your insulin comes from. The pancreas is what's helping the blood glucose to get into each cell of your body. The cortisol is acting on the pancreas to help it with the insulin, to help it with the blood glucose. In the liver, high cortisol levels increase gluconeogenesis and decrease glycogen synthesis. High levels. Gluconeogenesis is a metabolic pathway that results in the production of glucose from glucogenic amino acids, breaking protein down to convert it to sugar, which is actually a very clumsy and not efficient process to give you energy. Amino acids, lactate got that sentence. Found in triglycerides. Gluconeogenesis reverses glycolysis, a cytoplasmic pathway used to convert glucose into pyruvate molecules. This pathway is used to release energy through another process and oxidation reactions. Okay. This is happening in your liver, which means, of course, we need to have the liver health good, which, by the way, is another part of our initial blood test, the standard blood panel that we do when you come into this office. Unlike glycolysis, gluconeogenesis becomes active when the body needs energy. Not just when the body needs energy. Gluconeogenesis, converting protein to sugar for energy, becomes active when the body runs out of sugar and is looking for another source for energy. Then it takes protein. Okay, muscles have their own internal glycogen supply that allows them to respond rapidly to changes in ATP requirements, which is the energy in the muscle tissue. In the presence of cortisol, muscle cells decrease glucose uptake and consumption and increase protein degradation. So if your level of cortisol is high, such as living in chronic fight or flight, chronic fear, if you're living in chronic fear, if you're living in chronic fear, the cortisol presence will be high in your muscle. Then your muscle takes less sugar from your body and increases the breakdown of protein, because then the sugar is not there for the energy. So if you're living in chronic fear, the muscle tissue, the cortisol is present in your muscle tissue, telling your muscle tissue to break itself down for energy. But this makes sense because if you're living in chronic fear, then the body is starting to shift system. We went through that on a video or two ago. Your body's starting to shift systems if you're living in chronic fear. Shift system is because your body doesn't know when you're going to eat again, so it's storing stuff, storing fat, storing energy. So therefore, this cortisol is telling the muscle tissue to break itself down. So if you're living in chronic fear, you're not going to build muscle tissue the way you should be building it. Let that sink in. If you're living in chronic fear, you're not going to build muscle tissue the way you should be building it, which even means that the muscle tissue is not going to recycle itself. You're not going to replace the muscle tissue like you should be replacing it. Okay. In fat tissues, adipose tissues, the term. In fat tissues, cortisol increases lipolysis. Lipolysis is a catabolic process that results in the release of glycerol and free fatty acids. These free fatty acids can be used in B oxidation as an energy source for other cells as they continue to produce glucose. So, in fatty tissues, the presence of glucose. In fatty tissues, the presence of cortisol it performs the same. It triggers the same process. The tissue breaks down. So whereas if the muscle tissue is going to break it down, which is the opposite of what you want, the presence of cortisol in fatty tissue initially is going to break that down as well. So cortisol is telling all the body tissues to break down. For what reason? To produce glucose, to put glucose into the bloodstream. Because, cortisol, chronic fear, chronic fight or flight. We've got to supply energy. Chronic fight or flight. We've got to supply energy. Chronic fight or flight. We've got to keep supplying energy. Therefore, the cortisol is telling all your body tissues, break yourself down, break yourself down, break yourself down. We need to take the sugar that's in you and put it in the bloodstream. We've got to supply energy. Does this make the glucose reading in your bloodstream higher when we do our standard test? Yeah, it does. Therefore, when we see that on a test, it may be an indication that you are living with high cortisol, living in chronic fear. You might be. Usually it's not going to be chronic arousal. So you may be living in chronic fear because your blood glucose is reading high. If your A1C is high, even more likely. Okay. Back on track here. All right. Lastly, cortisol acts on the pancreas to decrease insulin and increase glucagon. Decrease insulin. Cortisol acts on the pancreas to decrease insulin. Sorry, vehicle caught my attention out there. Cortisol acts on pancreas to decrease insulin. If your insulin readings are high, it does indicate that the pancreas is working overtime. It could be a result of high cortisol. It may or may not be a result of pancreatic function. It may be a result of high cortisol telling the pancreas to keep doing this. So it decreases insulin. Of course, the flip side, or the result of that, not the flip side, the result of that, it decreases the insulin. The insulin is what's there to grab the glucose and to take it into the cells. So if the cortisol, the chronic cortisol is decreasing the blood level of insulin, therefore that means that the insulin is not there to grab the sugar from your blood and to pull it into your cells. So if you're living in chronic fear, chronic fight or flight, the cortisol is then going to actually basically sabotage your pancreas, which then sabotages your energy. I know it seems like a contradiction, and it is. This is the chronic effect, though. Excuse me. Sorry. Okay. Cortisol enhances the activity of glucagon, epinephrine, and okay. Now, epinephrine is also associated with fight or flight. You take the EpiPen. Most of you are probably going to be familiar with that term, the EpiPen. You take the EpiPen, you got it. Anaphylactic shock, if it's an emergency situation, get you out of that emergency situation. Epinephrine. Cortisol impacts that and enhances that activity. Chronic cortisol then is going to increase that. So you could look at that as a benefit of chronic cortisol, chronic fear. You could look at it that way. You say, it's less likely that I'm going to succumb to anaphylactic shock, choking. It's less likely that you're going to fall victim to something like that because your body is living in chronic fight or flight. Obviously, I have to give you that one. So cortisol will break down your fat. Cortisol breaks down your muscle as well. Breaking down the fat is a good thing, usually. Until you get to where you have no fat on your body. You have to look at it that way too. Breaking down the fat in general would be a good thing for most people. Let me say it that way. Breaking down the fat for most people would be a good thing because we have too much of it on the bodies. But then there are some of those that I treat here in this office that have their level of body fat is so low, you don't want the cortisol to be breaking down any more body fat. You don't want it to. With that said, you also have the cortisol at the same time breaking down the muscle tissue, which is, so when you put this whole picture together, chronic high cortisol is sabotaging your body all the way around. These effects, remember the difference between the acute and the chronic. If this is an acute situation, immediate, if this is an acute situation, then the acute high cortisol is beneficial because it puts you in that chronic. It doesn't put you in the chronic. The acute spike in cortisol kicks systems of your body into gear. For example, when you wake up in the morning, if your cortisol is acting as it should be, you don't have to wait for the fight or flight, the danger situation. You don't have to wait for that. Every single morning, your cortisol should be spiking, which puts your body into that mode where it's kicking your body systems into gear. So in the morning, think about this. Put this in perspective. In the morning, when you got the cortisol spike, actually I haven't heard this teaching in a while, come to think of it. Has this teaching gone out of style? Okay, well, I'm about to say it anyway. In the morning, when your cortisol is spiking, remember part of the effect of the cortisol is breaking down fat tissue. Breaking down muscle tissue too? Yes, I know, but breaking down fat tissue. Working out fasted. Now, I'm not suggesting a weighted fasted workout. I am not in any way suggesting a weighted fasted workout because the weighted workout, the resistance workout is there to build muscle tissue. I'm not going there with the cortisol spike. But if you do fasted cardio, when you're having the cortisol spike, that cortisol spike then is going to break down the fatty tissue. You're putting this picture together. In the morning, when your body should have that cortisol spike to wake you up and it's kicking the body systems into gear, you do your fasted cardio. It's going to get the blood pumping. It's going to get the lymph moving. The cortisol is then going to be breaking into your fatty tissue. If you will be consistent with the fasted morning cardio, then that cortisol spike in the morning is going to tap into that fatty tissue and start breaking that fatty tissue down. Yes, I know it's also going to break the muscle tissue down, but if you're targeting the fatty tissue in this way, the fasted cardio in the morning, if you're targeting the fatty tissue this way, then you're going to get more release of fatty tissue, than breaking down the muscle. Then you do add the resisted weighted workouts later on to rebuild the muscle tissue. In the morning, you take advantage of the cortisol spike, fasted cardio, to break down the fat tissue. Later on, you do the resistance weighted training for the muscle building. You see, rebuild the muscle. You're not going to lose much muscle that morning, but you will lose more fatty tissue by doing it that way. Are you catching this protocol? There is a certain way to do things to bring health to your body. There really is. So take advantage of the cortisol spike, the high levels of it in the morning. Do your fasted cardio then. Break into the fatty tissue, break down the fatty tissue, release the fatty tissue. You do this consistently for long enough, it's going to make a difference in the level of fatty tissue on your body. Then add the weighted resistance muscle training later to build your metabolism more so that around the clock, you're burning more fatty tissue as well. As a trainer, I used to teach all the time that there is a proper way to do things with your body. As a doctor, that hasn't changed. There's a proper way to do things with your body. If you want to achieve health, there's a proper way to do things with your body. You follow the proper protocol, you're going to get results. Follow the proper protocol, you're going to get results. Your body can't help but bring you the results when you follow the proper protocol. It's by default, your body has to do these things. There are certain biological facets of procedures. There are certain biological procedures that your body has to follow. It's coded into your DNA. Your body has to do it. It's coded in. It's instructions that your body has to follow. Okay. I just realized I got back on my soapbox again. In a different way, but I got back on soapbox again. Excuse me for that. Forgive me. Well, I think it was a good one. Okay, so, with that said, find us at justsimplyholistic.com. Get on there, download our intake papers, fill them out, get them back to us as fast as possible. Book your appointment with us. Find an open spot in our schedule. Get into our Simply Holistic office. Let's see where your cortisol levels are currently. Are you living in chronic high cortisol, which most of us probably are? Well, let's take advantage of that high cortisol while you have that. While you're at that level, let's take advantage of the high cortisol. Let's use it for the best health of your body, while at the same time, we are taking steps to rein the cortisol in. Okay? Let's follow these protocols that your body needs to follow so that we can get you the health that your body needs to have. So, come on into our Simply Holistic office. We look forward to seeing and serving you soon.